So, I bet none of you guys saw this video coming, and that is the review of the EXSENCE DC SS. Now, this reel came out in 2020, so it's about a year old, and this was actually sent to me by a subscriber named David, so you guys can thank David for this review, because I personally was never going to buy the EXSENCE DC SS. And I'll go into why a little bit later, but let's get into this reel right here. Now, David said this is pretty much a brand new reel. He used it maybe like once or twice, I think. But there's supposed to be oil in the box. I guess he took that out, but I'm gonna lay this off to the side. And let's take a look at this reel right here. And this reel has been requested by quite a few people. There we go. Check that out. Now, as you can see, this is a left-handed reel, but I don't get very many offers for these reels. In fact, David was the very first offer of an EXSENCE DC for me to test. So I decided to jump on it even though it is a left-handed reel and I'm right-handed. This feels kind of weird. I'm gonna let you guys check this reel out. As you can see, it is pretty much what they call, I guess, murdered out or blacked out. EXSENCE. And yeah, this is a reel designed for sea bass, so it is a saltwater reel. But it's one of those reels that can cross over into bass fishing. Let you guys take a closer look at this reel for all you guys who were interested in it. Check out these knobs here. So yeah, let me study this reel and looks like, I guess David was trying to figure out how to open up the side plate. Looks like he took a screwdriver to that, but hopefully he figured it out without breaking the reel. But yeah, I'm gonna do my customary inspection on this thing, and I will be right back. So I'm done with my inspection, and the first thing I'm going to do is explain exactly what is EXSENCE. And this is for those of you who have never heard of the EXSENCE name before. So basically, EXSENCE is a mostly JDM lineup of rods and reels within Shimano that are built to target sea bass and rockfish and are designed to be fished mostly with braided line. So they are basically inshore saltwater reels and rods, and for the most part, pretty pricey. So why did I agree to do a review of a saltwater reel? Well, that's because a lot of the inshore saltwater reels from Shimano, as well as other companies, are based off of their freshwater platforms. So that means that a lot of their inshore reels can easily be used as freshwater bass reels. And I call these reels crossover reels. Now, when it comes to the EXSENCE SS, this is actually the third EXSENCE DC baitcaster that has come out so far. Now, the original, which I actually have right here, came out way back in 2012, so almost 10 years ago, and this is considered a cult sleeper reel amongst JDM enthusiasts. And it's also considered to be one of the best reel bargains of all time. And that's because Shimano gave you the performance and specs of a $500 reel for about $250 at the time. And I'm going to go over the specs briefly to show you why that is. Now, the original EXSENCE DC is the last reel that Shimano used this older platform on. And it's the same platform that was used in the CHRONARCH D as well as the Core 100. Now, it's got a rugged aluminum frame and aluminum handle side plate, sporting a 90mm handle, which today is not that big, but back then a 90mm handle was pretty much unheard of with Shimano. It's got a cone-shaped tapered line guide, This reel is made in Japan, and these reels were supposed to feature a clicking drag, which for some reason mine does not have. So apparently this one got past Shimano's quality control. But yeah, a clicking drag back in 2012. But what really made this reel stand out was this right here, the DC braking system, which is the Intelligent DC Plus. Now unfortunately, this is the only reel that Shimano incorporated this DC braking system into. And let me go over why this braking system is so special. So once again, the EXSENCE lineup is designed to mostly be used with braided line. So you got 4 different braid settings, minimum all the way to max. And then you got F for fluorocarbon lines, BB for big baits. And then you got this SP mode, which is what they call night mode. And in the night mode, you can actually run a loose spool tension and cast your lures completely thumb free and not even have to stop the spool once the lure hits the water. It stops on its own. And this of course is to aid those guys out waiting at nighttime because they can't see the lures splash in the water. Now if you want to see a casting demonstration of this reel, I did one a few years ago, so just go to my video playlist and look for this thumbnail and check that out. But yeah, in my opinion, this was probably the second best DC brakes Shimano had at the time, just behind their ANTARES DC of course. But then in 2017, they replaced the original EXSENCE with this model here, which is now known as the 2017 EXSENCE DC. And unfortunately, they abandoned the high bang for your buck formula because the 2017 model was based off the top of the line ANTARES DC. So since it's basically an ANTARES DC modified for inshore saltwater use, it's priced like an ANTARES as well at close to $600. Then last year Shimano came out with this reel, the EXSENCE SS, which is somewhat a return to the low-cost formula of the original. And part of me thinks that they came out with this reel so soon after the 2017 model because maybe that 2017 isn't selling that great. So in this video, we're going to see if the EXSENCE SS can fill the big shoes of the original, and they are some big shoes to fill. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have figured it out already, but in case you haven't, the EXSENCE DC SS is based off the CURADO DC. So does that mean that Shimano just took a CURADO DC and then gave it a different paint scheme and called it the EXSENCE SS? I'm gonna say no, but I will say this, based off of my analysis of both reels, they are about 80% the same. So that means the EXSENCE will have an aluminum frame with graphite side plates, and unfortunately no, the handle side plate seems to be graphite, not aluminum like the original. The EXSENCE will have 6+1 bearings just like the CURADO. It's going to have the same drag power of about 11 pounds. It's going to feature a 90mm handle, non-clicking spool tension, and a clicking drag star that's made of aluminum, of course. And also, of course, it will feature the micro module gears as well as X-ship. And the spool looks to be the same, of course only a different color. So it looks to be a 150 spool capacity, and it's going to be the same right down to that single dot that they drilled into the CURADO DC spool. So these are almost identical reels in a lot of ways. As you can see, the side plates are pretty much identical, the brake dial placement is identical, so they will palm pretty much the same. But I did find about 5 or 6 different things about the EXSENCE SS that are different than the CURADO DC. Now of course the first obvious difference is going to be the color scheme. The EXSENCE features a very stealthy, I guess, murdered out look. Now the reel itself is not black, it's like a dark silver or dark gray, but the components and trim are colored black, like your spool tension that doesn't have any kind of design or anything. Of course your drag star is black, and I believe it's actually powder coated, not anodized. And then of course you got your handle, your spool is black, thumb bar black, and a couple of trim pieces there. So if you like the stealthy look, then the EXSENCE SS might be for you. And then of course the EXSENCE features these big power knobs. And while I'm not a fan of power knobs, I will say that the foam or the EVA on these knobs are very, very soft and comfortable. So I guess that means they're high density, not rough feeling like some EVA power knobs on other competing reels. And also, while both of these reels have the same amount of bearings, they both have X-ship and micro module gears. When I'm cranking the handle on this EXSENCE, it feels noticeably different than on the CURADO DC. The handle tolerance, especially when I'm cranking it, seems tighter and more precise. So I'm not sure if they did anything to the internals of the EXSENCE to beef them up for saltwater duty, but it could be the fact that these knobs are the foam instead of that rubbery Septon of the CURADO DC. But yeah, you can definitely tell there is a difference in the retrieve on both of these reels. Both of them very smooth, but the EXSENCE feels more precise. Now I mentioned that the EXSENCE has the same amount of bearings as the CURADO, but on Shimano Japan's website they list them differently. Instead of saying 6 plus 1, they say 4 plus 2 plus 1. So that leads me to believe that those two bearings that they singled out are probably the spool bearings, and they may have received some kind of a special treatment to make them more corrosion resistant. But being a JDM Shimano, the bearings on this EXSENCE SS are more than likely higher spec than the CURADO anyway. Now the EXSENCE is only going to have two gear ratios available, a 7.4 and an 8.5. Now the CURADO DC has those as well, but the CURADO offers a 6.2 option for cranking duty, while the EXSENCE does not. Now here's something that the EXSENCE has that the CURADO does not, and that is a drag clicker, just like the original. Even though mine, for some reason, didn't have it. So if you like drag clickers, once again, maybe this EXSENCE is for you. And I will say that the noise is a little bit deeper than the noise you'll find on the clicking drags of Shimano's BFS reels. And then last but not least, the EXSENCE SS will have the IDC4 EXSENCE tune. And let me show you what that means. So the IDC4 on the CURADO DC as well as the American SLX DC works like this. You got only 4 brake settings controlled by this external dial, and your number 1 setting is your extreme distance mode, which gives you the least amount of brake force. And this is for really heavy aerodynamic lures that cut through the air very well, and is to be used in optimal conditions such as no wind or if you have a wind at your back. And then you have the number 2 setting, and this is the braid and mono line setting. And then your number 3 setting is your fluorocarbon line setting. And then your number 4 setting is for extreme windy conditions and for skipping. So of course, this is going to give you the maximum amount of brakes. Now with the EXSENCE, the IDC4 EXSENCE tune is a little different. So your first setting that you'll see is going to be the letter F for fluorocarbon line. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Now the remaining 3 settings are all going to be for braided line. So number 3 is for braided line, but it gives you the most braking force of the braid line settings. So this is going to be for your lighter lures. And then of course number 2 is slightly less braking for slightly heavier lures. And then number 1 is going to be for your really heavy lures, and I'm thinking 3/4 of an ounce and up. So basically on the EXSENCE, you got your 3 braid settings and then your 1 lone fluorocarbon setting. Okay, so as you can see, the scale is out, so that means we're going to be getting some weights. Now none of these reels are light by any means, but let's start off with the CURADO DC first. 7.86 ounces. All right, so let's get the EXSENCE SS. 7.59, so pretty much 7.6 ounces. So just a little bit lighter than the CURADO, but of course, picking them up one after the other, I really don't feel it. So now let's weigh the original EXSENCE, and this thing is a brick. 8.53 ounces. So the SS lost almost a full ounce over the original model, and you can definitely feel it a little bit. That's probably due to the fact that the original reel does have an aluminum handle side plate. But now I'm gonna pull the spools out of these reels because maybe, just maybe, Shimano Japan may have done something to this spool to make it lighter than the CURADO DC. Let's cross our fingers on that. So to get to the spool on this EXSENCE, it's just like the CURADO DC, where you got to flip the dial to the open setting, and then the side plate twists down. So I think David may have had a problem with that, but hopefully I think he figured it out. But yeah, let's pull this spool out. Now on the original EXSENCE, you can actually remove the spool by doing this. There's a latch down here. Then I believe it just comes off. It doesn't slide or anything. There we go. Okay, so all spools are out. And here's the spool of the SS. You can see it looks pretty much identical to the CURADO DC spool. Same width, same depth, same long spool shaft, and unfortunately they feel about the same, so I don't think we're going to get any kind of weight savings here. But let's weigh the CURADO spool first. I remember it's heavy, 20.8 grams. Okay, so let's do the SS. 20.7 grams, so pretty much the exact same weight. Kind of disappointing. I was hoping Shimano would have lightened it up by a couple of grams, but that's just not the case. 20.7. So let's weigh the spool on the original EXSENCE DC, and this is a 100 line capacity. And you can see they have put these notches in the spool to show you have a quarter of the way filled and then halfway filled. And that's not there on the new spool. But the old spool, $17.2. So that's pretty light for a DC reel. I think that's lighter than the new Scorpion DC, as well as the old Scorpion DC spool. So this old spool weighs 2.5 grams less than the new spool, and it holds less line. And before I put these spools in, I believe the spool on the EXSENCE will fit into the CURADO no problem. Fits in there no problem, spins freely. And I like the black color, definitely better than that green. So last year when Shimano announced the EXSENCE DC SS, I took a look at the promotional videos, I took a look at the specs, and I thought to myself, all that is just a recolored and rebadged CURADO DC with some power knobs. Now I know everyone loves the CURADO DC, but personally, since I own so many other of Shimano's higher end DC reels, I found that the CURADO DC was lacking in certain areas. So basically I looked at the EXSENCE SS and thought to myself, I really don't want one. But now, thanks to David who sent me this reel, I do know that there are enough differences in the EXSENCE SS to make it a completely different reel than the CURADO DC. In my opinion, it is still a downgrade to the original reel. I mean, the original EXSENCE had an aluminum handle side plate, the cone-shaped line guide, the significantly lighter spool, and of course, the far superior IDC Plus brake system. And it blows my mind as to why Shimano couldn't bring this brake system back and put it into the SS instead of giving us the IDC4 EXSENCE tune. So that was a dumb move on Shimano's part in my opinion, but I think the reasoning behind that may be the fact that if they put that brake system in this SS, nobody would want to buy their super expensive 2017 version. But that's just my opinion. Now, does that mean that this EXSENCE SS is a bad reel? Of course not. And I'm going to take this reel out on the water and show you guys what it can do casting wise. But this time around, once I knew David sent this reel to me and it was in the mail, I went ahead and ordered some braid in a nice bright orange color because I know you guys like these bright colors. So we're going to do the casting test of the EXSENCE SS with the line that it was designed to use, which is braid, and we're going to see what's what. So maybe that braid tune DC system will surprise and impress me out on the water. Okay guys, so the next time you see this reel, it's going to be spooled up with some orange braid, and we're going to see what this EXSENCE DC SS can do. Thanks a lot.